Casserole dish was still warm in my hands when my mother-in-law opened the front door and looked straight through me. Not past me. Through me. The way you look at a stranger who's rung the wrong bell. I'm Mara Sutton, 32 years old, and I'd driven 4 hours from Memphis to be there. My daughter Lily was asleep in her car seat in the driveway, 7 years old, hair still damp from the bath I'd rushed her through before we left. I'd made my late husband's grandmother's sweet potato casserole, the one she taught me herself, the one she said tasted like home. I brought it because I thought it still meant something. Because I thought I still meant something. My father-in-law stepped up behind her. He looked at the dish in my hands, then at me, and said, "We weren't sure you'd actually come." I said I would. I told him. He nodded slowly, the way people do when they're deciding something. "Lily can come in," he said. "But we need to talk about the arrangement going forward. This is a family dinner, Mara, and you're—" He paused. Chose the word carefully. "You're adjacent now." Adjacent. 3 years since his son died. 3 years I'd kept his name on Lily's school forms, brought her to every birthday, every holiday, every Sunday lunch. 3 years of adjacent. I set the casserole on the porch railing, unbuckled Lily from her seat, walked her to the door, kissed her forehead. "I'll be right here, baby," I said. Then I went back to my car, sat down, and called the one person who would know exactly what to do. My aunt answered on the second ring. I didn't even say hello. I said, "They just told me I'm adjacent." She was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. "Ben, is Lily inside?" "Yes." "Good. Now listen to me. What bank holds the trust?" That's the thing about Aunt Patrice. She doesn't do comfort first. She does architecture. 61 years old, retired estate paralegal, and she has never once told me everything would be okay before she understood exactly what was broken. I told her the bank. First National, the joint custodial account my husband and I had opened when Lily was born. His parents were listed as secondary trustees. A formality, we were told. Something his mother had pushed for when he was first diagnosed. For Lily's security, she'd said. In case something happens to you both. Patrice breathed out slow. "Pull up the account right now. Tell me every name on it." I opened the app. 3 names. Mine. My mother-in-law's. My father-in-law's. "When did you last look at the transactions?" I hadn't. Not really. Not since the grief had made everything feel like wading through concrete. I scrolled back. 6 weeks. 12 transactions I hadn't made. $2,400 to Lakewood Country Club. Member renewal. My father-in-law's initials in the note field. $1,100 to Sterling Wine Collective. Quarterly shipment. My mother-in-law's email on the confirmation. $875 to Wellamy Pet Spa. Grooming and boarding for their 2 cavaliers. $340 to a restaurant I'd never been to, the kind with no prices on the menu. And at the bottom, the one that made my vision go white around the edges, $12,000. Wire transfer. Recipient, Derrick Holdings, LLC. Memo, startup contribution, family investment. Derrick is my brother-in-law. He has started and dissolved 4 businesses in 6 years. My husband told me once, quietly, in the dark, that he'd spent years bailing Derrick out and that he was done, that the money in that account was for Lily's future, that no one else was to touch it. I read Patrice every number. She didn't gasp. She just said, "Forward me the statements. All of them. I'm calling my contact at the firm in the morning, but tonight you're going to do exactly what I tell you." The porch light flickered on. Through the front window, I could see Lily at the dinner table, coloring something on a paper placemat. She looked small in that big chair. She looked like her father. I did what Patrice told me. First, I removed my in-laws as secondary trustees. The bank's mobile platform allowed it, a feature I hadn't known existed until Patrice walked me through it word by word. Trustee modification request. Submitted. Pending review, 24 to 48 hours. Second, I transferred the remaining balance, $43,000, into the individual custodial account I'd opened in my name only 2 years ago, when the estate attorney had quietly suggested I should have one. I'd forgotten about it almost immediately. Patrice hadn't. Transfer submitted. Scheduled for 6 a.m. Third, I froze the joint account entirely. Nothing in, nothing out. My authorization only. I sat in the car for a while after that, watching the window. My father-in-law came into the frame at one point, stood behind Lily, put a hand on her shoulder. She held up her drawing and he nodded at it, and for a second I felt the whole thing crack open in my chest. The grief, the exhaustion, the years of trying to be gracious about people who had never once been gracious back. Then he turned and said something to my mother-in-law, and they both looked out the window at my car. Not with warmth, with calculation. I looked away first. Patrice texted, "Sleep. Let the transfers clear. Call me at 7. I drove to the Holiday Inn 4 miles down the road. Paid cash. Room was on the ground floor, facing the parking lot, nothing romantic about it. I'd put the safety latch on and sat on the edge of the bed and ordered soup from the diner across the street because I hadn't eaten since noon. My phone lit up at 9:47 p.m., my mother-in-law. I declined. Again, at 10:12, declined. A text from my father-in-law at 10:31, "Mara, we'd like to discuss the account irregularities. Please call us tonight." I read it 3 times. Irregularities. The word they chose for the moment they realized what I'd done. I didn't answer. I finished the soup. I turned off the lamp. At 6:04 a.m., my banking app sent me a notification. Transfer complete. $43,000. Individual account. My name only. At 6:09 a.m., a second notification. Trustee modification approved. At 6:23 a.m., my phone started ringing. My father-in-law. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave one. My mother-in-law called twice in a row. I declined both. The third time I picked up. She didn't say good morning. She said, "You empty the account." I moved the funds to Lily's custodial account, I said, which I am the sole trustee of as of this morning. That money is my daughter's. It was established in her name. My husband's intention was documented in the estate plan. I have copies. Silence. Then her voice shifted. Colder. You're doing this because of last night. You're punishing us. I'm doing this, I said, because of a $12,000 wire to your other son's LLC and $2,400 to a country club that Lily has never set foot in. She hung up. I showered, dressed, drove back to the house, rang the bell. My father-in-law opened the door. He was already in his weekend clothes, pressed khakis, a collared shirt, like he'd been up for hours. Probably had been. "We should talk inside," he said. "This is fine," I said. I wasn't going back in that house. He looked past me at the driveway, like he was checking to see if anyone had come with me. Derek had a legitimate business opportunity. Derek's business opportunities are not my responsibility, I said. My husband made that very clear, in writing. Your husband is gone, Mara. He said it like it was a card to play, like the fact of his son's death belonged to him somehow. I felt something go quiet inside me, the kind of quiet that isn't peace but purpose. "I know," I said, "which is why I'm the one standing here protecting what he left for his daughter." He started to say something about lawyers. I let him finish. Then I said, "Patrice has already contacted an estate attorney. The documentation of unauthorized withdrawals from a minor's custodial trust has been submitted to the firm. If you'd like to pursue this legally, you're welcome to. But I'd encourage you to speak with your own attorney first." He didn't say anything after that. I asked for Lily. He went inside and came back with her. She had syrup on her sleeve and her shoes were on the wrong feet. She held up a piece of paper, the drawing from the night before. A house with a big tree, 2 figures in front. One tall, one small. "That's us," she said. "I see that," I said. "It's beautiful, baby." I buckled her in the car seat. She fell asleep before we hit the highway. Patrice's contact at the estate firm was a woman named Gwen, who spoke the way Patrice did, without wasted words. We met at her office on a Tuesday. I brought the bank statements, the original trust documents, the estate plan, and the screenshots of every transaction. Gwen laid them out on the table and didn't react much, just organized them, noted the dates, noted the memo fields. "The $12,000 wire is the most actionable," she said. Funds from a minor's custodial trust transfer to a third-party LLC with no documented authorization from the primary trustee. That's a breach. The country club membership, the wine subscription, the pet expenses, those are supporting evidence of a pattern. She said the word breach, the way a doctor says diagnosis. Factual, unsexy, terrifying. What does that mean for them? I asked. They'll likely receive a demand letter first, she said. Full restitution of the $12,000 plus any other unauthorized withdrawals. If they don't comply, we file. If they file first... She paused and looked at me. They lose. The paper trail is unambiguous. The demand letter went out on a Thursday. My mother-in-law called me that Saturday. Her voice was different this time. The cold was still there, but underneath it something had shifted. A kind of tiredness. We didn't think you were paying attention, she said. I almost laughed. I know. Derek needed... I don't need to know what Derek needed, I said. Lily needs her college fund intact. That's what I know. A pause. This is going to damage things. What things? She didn't answer that. I think she meant us. The version of us that had existed when her son was alive. The holidays, the Sunday lunches, the polite fiction that we all loved each other cleanly. I think she meant that. I think things were already damaged, I said. I was just the last to stop pretending. The restitution check arrived 6 weeks later, $14,200, the $12,000 plus the country club membership and the wine subscription. The pet spa and the restaurant they disputed. Gwen said it wasn't worth fighting over. I agreed. I deposited the check into Lily's account, took a screenshot, sent it to Patrice. She replied, "There she is." Patrice came to visit a month after that, drove up from Baton Rouge on a Friday with a trunk full of pralines and a very strong opinion about my new apartment's curtains. We sat on the balcony while Lily slept and watched the Memphis skyline do its thing, all humidity and neon and the smell of the river. "You know what your husband said to me once?" Patrice said. She was the only person in my life who talked about him like that. Present tense, easy, without treating it as a wound. What? He said, "Patrice, if anything ever happens to me, make sure Mara knows she doesn't owe anyone her grief." She paused. I think what he meant was, don't let them use it against you. I looked out at the river for a while. I used to think being a good widow meant being grateful, I said. Grateful they still let me come. Grateful they still let me bring food and sit at the table. Grateful for adjacent. Patrice made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "You were never adjacent," she said. Lily's school had a fall festival 2 weeks after that. I brought the sweet potato casserole, set it on the potluck table between someone's store-bought pasta salad and a truly heroic pan of cornbread. By the end of the night, it was gone. 3 parents asked for the recipe. I thought about his grandmother who taught me to make it. I thought about standing in her kitchen in Knoxville the first Thanksgiving after we got married, her hands guiding mine over the mixing bowl, the smell of brown sugar and butter filling the whole room. I wrote the recipe out on a note card for all 3 parents. At the bottom I wrote, "This was my husband's grandmother's recipe. It tastes like home." Not their home. Mine. Ours. Me and Lily and the apartment with the curtains, Patrice hates, and the balcony that's too small but faces west, so we get the whole sunset. That's what I kept. The rest I let them have. The country club, the Sunday dinners, the annual photo in front of the fireplace that I've been cropped into for 3 years and cropped out of now. They could have all of it. Lily gets the casserole. She gets Patrice. She gets the river and the sunset and a college fund that no one will ever touch again. She gets me. Paying attention. That's more than adjacent. That's everything. I used to believe that loyalty was something you proved by staying quiet, by showing up anyway, by making the casserole even when no one saved you a seat at the table. For 3 years after my husband died, I proved it over and over. I drove 4 hours for every holiday. I let his mother clip Lily's hair the way she wanted. I swallowed the word adjacent and told myself it was just an awkward choice of words, that people grieve differently, that I needed to give them more time. What I didn't understand then What I had to learn the hard way, sitting in a motel parking lot staring at my banking app, is that some people read your silence as permission, not because they're monsters, because they've never once been held accountable, and silence looks exactly like consent when you've never known the difference. The $12,000 wire to my brother-in-law's LLC wasn't an accident. The country club membership wasn't an oversight. Those were decisions made by people who had looked at me, measured my grief against my willpower, and decided the math worked in their favor. They thought I was too tired to notice, too broken to fight back, too grateful for the Sunday lunches to risk losing them. They were wrong about all three. What I did that night wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that because I've thought about it a lot since. Revenge would have felt different, hotter, messier, less like arithmetic. What I did was simply stop absorbing consequences that weren't mine to carry. I moved money that belonged to my daughter back into an account that only I could touch. I called Patrice, who had always known more than she let on. I let the paper trail do what paper trails are built to do. The cause was a pattern of choices. The effect was a demand letter, a restitution check, and a very quiet Sunday that I spent on my balcony watching Lily draw houses with crayons. That's how it works. Not dramatically, not all at once. You make one clear decision, not out of anger, but out of clarity. And then the next decision gets a little easier, and the one after that, easier still. Integrity isn't a single act. It's a direction you choose, and then keep choosing, even when the people around you are betting you'll stop. Patrice told me once that the most dangerous thing a woman can do is let people mistake her exhaustion for weakness. I think about that a lot. I was exhausted, yes. I was grieving, yes. But exhaustion and weakness are not the same thing, and somewhere in the middle of that parking lot, sitting in the dark with my phone in my hand and my daughter asleep in the back seat, I finally understood the difference. Lily will be 8 next spring. She doesn't know the details of any of this, and she won't for a long time. But she knows that I showed up, that I buckled her in, that I drove home. I think that's what my husband meant when he told Patrice not to let me owe anyone my grief. He meant, don't let the hardest season of your life become the reason someone else gets to define your worth. I don't owe anyone adjacent, not anymore.